Today's gospel passage is one of those interesting ones where we often tend to focus solely on the heart of the story, which is about a rich man who doesn't do enough, who doesn't show any care at all for the poor man who lives at his gate. And clearly there is a very strong message at the heart of today's gospel about the fact that we have an obligation to care for those who, not just who are poor, but who are vulnerable, who are less fortunate than we are. This is a consistent theme of the teaching of Christ in the Gospels. However, if we stop there, I think there's an important aspect of the story that often gets missed. And that's what happens to the rich man after he dies and finds himself in this place of torment. He asks if Lazarus can be sent back to warn his family not to make the same mistake, and he is told flat out no. And it's kind of an interesting interaction and response. And I think it's interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one is, first of all, there is the uncomfortable reality of human nature that this response from Abraham to the rich man really speaks to the heart of. He tells him that he won't be sent back because it's all there already laid out for them. You know, the prophets, the teachings of the law, it's all there laid out. And if they're not going to listen to that, then why would someone coming back from the dead have any sort of impact? And to me, that really speaks volumes about the truth of human nature and this tendency that we have towards a hardness of heart, which is why that grace that God offers us freely is so very important, and why we all need that in order to overcome that tendency. And our hardness of heart is such that even if someone came back from the dead to say, hey, you should be doing something differently, there would still be that tendency in us to want to do that which is sinful, that which is selfish. The other thing that I think is really interesting about Lazarus not being sent back is the way in which this is consistent with how Christ calls us into relationship throughout the rest of the Gospels. You see, it'd be pretty easy to do the right thing if someone came back from the dead and put the fear of God into you and said, you better do this, you better not make this mistake, you better do this instead, otherwise there is torment and suffering waiting for you on the other side. But what Christ is calling us to in the Gospels is not some sort of fire insurance type relationship where we are in a relationship with Christ because we are scared of what will happen to us otherwise. Instead, what Christ wants from us is a relationship of love. Love for God, love for truth, love for neighbour. And a love that motivates us to want to do the good because we love God and we love what is good, not because we are scared of what will happen if we don't do the good. And you'll notice that's a very fundamental but important shift in the way that we interact with God and the way that we live our moral life. But of course, in order to do that, as today's gospel really highlights, we need that grace from God to overcome that tendency towards selfishness and hardness of heart that plagues us as human beings. Today's saint quote of the day comes from Pope St. John Paul II, and he said this: "The human person is a good towards which the only proper attitude is love." And to me, this really sums up the heart of today's gospel message, this call to go out into our community and to show love and care and concern for our neighbour, particularly for those who are downtrodden, those who are less fortunate, those who are the more vulnerable members of our community. But also, this is one of those gospel calls that can be very easy to forget about in the busyness of our daily life. We just get so caught up in going from thing to thing and place to place that we forget about those members of our community who might not be doing as well as we are. So perhaps today is an opportunity for us to stop and to contemplate this teaching again and to ask ourselves that vitally important question: who are the Lazaruses in my community? Who are the Lazaruses maybe even in my own family or my church? And what can I do to go and reach out to those people and show the care, the love and concern that Christ expects of me in today's gospel?